I found out my wife was cheating on me with my sister's husband. I never imagined that my life could unravel like this, that the woman I loved, the person I built my entire world around, could betray me in such a cruel way. But here I am, living in the aftermath of a revelation that still feels like a punch to the gut. It all started innocently enough. My wife, Sarah, had always been close with my sister Laura. They would often have long conversations, go shopping together, and spend weekends at each other's houses. I didn't think much of it. They were like best friends, and I was happy that my wife had someone in my family she could bond with so easily. Laura's husband, Mark, was part of our circle too. We often hung out as a group, barbecues, weekend getaways, family gatherings. It was all so normal. So I thought. I had no idea what was lurking beneath the surface of this so-called family bond. In hindsight, I see there were subtle signs, little things that, at the time, I brushed off as unimportant. Sarah would sometimes be overly concerned about Mark's well-being. She'd ask how he was doing, if his work was going well, if he needed help with anything. I thought she was just being kind. After all, Mark and Laura had hit a rough patch in their marriage, and Sarah seemed to be playing the role of the supportive sister-in-law. But slowly, things began to shift. Sarah's behavior changed. She became more distant, her phone glued to her hand, with sudden texts that made her smile a little too brightly. I'd ask her who she was talking to, and she'd shrug it off. Just Laura, she'd say, or sometimes, just a friend from work. It never occurred to me to question her. I trusted her. I trusted both of them. It wasn't until I found myself alone one weekend that the pieces started to fall into place. Sarah had gone out, telling me she was spending the day with Laura, running errands and getting some sister time. Laura was always her excuse. I thought nothing of it, happy that my wife had such a strong connection with my family. That day, though, I had this nagging feeling I couldn't shake. Something just didn't sit right with me, so I decided to give Laura a call. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe just a whim. When Laura picked up, she sounded surprised. "Oh, hey, what's up?" she asked. I casually mentioned that Sarah said they were spending the day together. Laura hesitated for a beat, and in that brief silence, my heart sank. No, she finally said. "I haven't seen Sarah today. Why, what's going on?" My world shifted in that moment. I managed to mumble something about a mix-up, but my mind was racing. Where was Sarah if not with my sister? I could feel the sickening churn in my stomach, that primal instinct when you know something is terribly, terribly wrong. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I started paying more attention. I began to notice the small lies, the quick, evasive answers when I asked about her day, the sudden need for privacy. The night she left her phone on the counter was the night everything changed. I wasn't the kind of person who snoops through their partner's phone, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you would. My hands were trembling as I picked it up. At first, I didn't see anything alarming. But as I scrolled through her messages, I came across a thread that made my blood run cold. It wasn't Laura she had been texting all those times. It was Mark, and the messages, they weren't innocent. They were flirtatious, playful, and then, as I scrolled further, they became explicit. Things I didn't even want to believe my wife was capable of saying to another man, especially my sister's husband. My heart raced as I read the words. "I can't stop thinking about last night," one message from Sarah said. "When can we meet again?" Mark's response was equally damning. "Soon. I miss you already." I felt like I had been punched in the chest. The room spun around me, and I had to sit down. I wanted to scream, to break something, but all I could do was stare at the screen, disbelief and rage boiling inside me. How could they do this? How could Sarah betray me like this? And with Mark of all people. The days that followed were a blur. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't know how. Every time I looked at her, all I could see were those messages. I played it over and over in my mind, thinking of all the times they must have lied to both me and Laura. Family dinners, holidays, birthdays. All the moments I thought were filled with love and trust, now tainted by their betrayal. Eventually, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I confronted Sarah one evening after dinner. My voice shook as I asked her, "Are you sleeping with Mark?" Her face turned white. For a moment she tried to deny it, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. How could you? I asked, my voice breaking. How could you do this to me? To Laura? At first, she was defensive, trying to turn the blame on me. It wasn't like that, she said, her voice trembling. It just happened. We didn't mean for it to go this far. But those were just empty words. There's no justification for what they did, no excuse that could ever make it okay. They had both betrayed us, two people who loved and trusted them, and now everything was falling apart. I wasn't sure what to do next. I knew I had to tell Laura. She had a right to know what her husband had been doing behind her back. But how could I be the one to destroy her world? How could I tell her that her own sister-in-law had been sleeping with her husband? In the end, I had no choice. I couldn't let them keep living this lie, pretending like everything was normal. I sat down with Laura one evening, and as gently as I could, I told her the truth. Watching her face crumple as the reality of the situation hit her was one of the hardest things I've ever had to witness. The shock, the pain, the betrayal. It was all there, raw and real. She broke down, sobbing into her hands, and all I could do was sit there, feeling just as broken. Mark tried to deny it at first, of course, but there was no escaping the truth. The messages were there, undeniable proof of their affair. He tried to apologize, tried to say it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But the damage was done. Sarah and I are no longer together. There's no going back from something like this. Trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. I don't know what the future holds for me, or for Laura. We've both lost so much, our marriages, our sense of security, our faith in the people we loved. But what I've learned is that sometimes the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way forward. It's the only way to break free from the lies and betrayal, even if it means starting over from scratch.